Hopefully you've already watched the video on entering your current inventory in the income and expense summary page. And if you have not, I would go back and make sure you watch that first to understand how to fill in this upper portion. And then this video is going to focus on number 4, or your non-current inventory on the income and expense summary page. You'll notice that it says review down here in 6C, and that's because we don't have any numbers filled in this section. So again, keeping very good records and having those records handy while you're filling this out would be crucial, and also make this much easier if you have everything organized. So again, when you start on this page and open it up, the only 2 numbers that you're going to see are your beginning inventory for E, which came from the basic setup page, and then this number here, which is your closing non-current inventory from the closing ending non-current inventory page. So the numbers that you put on this page are all of these numbers add up to give you that last number in 4A. So the other line that we're going to have to watch while we're filling out this section is line H. This is where we're going to see the depreciation that has to be shown for all of your non-current inventory items that you purchased and have depreciated. So that's a line we're going to keep an eye on as we go through and calculate that out. I will have a separate video on how to do depreciation. So let's get started with our first year, which is 2018. And we started this year with $7,680. This year is got a lot of things that you can record in it each year. So this one in particular, for the application I'm using, they actually made additional purchases of non-current inventory. So this may have been a heifer or a cow. It could have been a piece of equipment. But whatever you purchased during the year that is on your non-current inventory list, you need to record those purchases here. In this example, we're using $2,100 for the purchase. And we also could record sales if we sold a cow or we sold a piece of equipment, something that was in our non-current inventory, that would go here. And non-cash sales, those are items that you're trading out of your non-current assets. So that is, and it's something that supports your SAE. So this is, if you don't know what something is, use the question marks to help pull up a description for you. And so if what I'm telling you in the video isn't really explaining it well enough for you, you can look at those question marks to help. So there's another line up here. This is contributed to your inventory outside contribution of a non-current asset. So this would be a gift. So if somebody gifted you an animal, that a cow or a sow or a dairy cow, then you could put that gifted animal here. But this also just to know that it's going to be transferred into the net worth of your personal items. So these are items you didn't purchase, but you were rather gifted them. So this person that I'm using for the example had none. Here is where you transfer in from operations, so non-cash transfer. So this is where your young stock from that you had born into your project would be transferred in. And I'll have another video that explains that in more detail as well. But this individual didn't transfer in any. This is a beef project, for an example, but they didn't transfer in any heifers. So they're going to leave this 0. Now, if I add up the two numbers here, because we started with this, we didn't sell anything, so we still have all this, but we also purchased $2,100. If we add this up, it equals $9,780, which a lot of people like to put here for their closing inventory. But you need to take into consideration the depreciation on your non-current inventory items. Anything you purchased has to show depreciation. So if you have purchased animals that you started with, they're going to depreciate. Purchased equipment, tools, anything that you have listed in that is going to have to show depreciation. So there's different ways you can calculate depreciation. Some of that, the AET uses a different method where, based on the number of years you keep it, they use a percentage to depreciate. I always like to use the straight line method of depreciation, but there is no one formula and there is no one correct way to calculate depreciation. It's just important that you show some here. So in the example application I'm using, they show depreciation of $500. So they put in $9,280 for their closing inventory. And you can see the $500 depreciation here. Now, they started with quite a bit of inventory, and some of these items have depreciated. So that's what that is reflecting. One of the things I talked about in recording your non-current inventory is that it helps to put when you purchased it in the year, because like I said, if you purchase something in November, December of the year, it's not going to depreciate much. So there's a lot of things to consider when you're entering your numbers here. So you need to put some thought into that. All right, so you'll notice that the closing inventory on 4A now becomes the beginning inventory for 2019 on line 4E. So again, we're going to look at the records and determine if we have any of these things that we need to record. This example that I have, they made another purchase to add to their non-current inventory. Now, this is things that they plan to keep longer than a year. And so they purchased $4,250. And again, like I said, if I add these up, this would be $13,530. But they are showing depreciation. So they are going to they put in $12,530, which is a depreciation of $1,000 for that year. And that you can see on line 4H. All right. So the $12,530 comes over to 2020 and is the beginning inventory. And again, you need to look at your records and determine if you transferred in any animals, you had any gifts, purchases. This individual had purchases again this year. They purchased $12,500 worth of non-current assets. They didn't have any sales and they didn't have any non-cash sales. So this adds up to $25,030. And so we are going to have to show depreciation. And now that we've purchased some additional items over here, we're going to show more depreciation. So this individual shows a depreciation of $3,000 this year. And so they put in $22,030 for their closing inventory. And there's the $3,000 depreciation. Now, this number could be larger if you have, for example, a loss. So let's say an animal dies. All right, whatever you had that animal valued at in your inventory, you're going to have to subtract from the loss. So your closing inventory could be down if you had a cow die that you had valued at $2,500. you would want to subtract that from here, and then this would be $5,500. It would be good to explain that in your SAE entrepreneurship descriptions right here. So if in 2020, for example, you had an animal die, you would want to have that animal listed in your inventory, but then note that the animal died. Okay. You cannot just ignore the fact that animals have left your project, because that's going to throw your numbers off. The other way that this will affect your numbers is if you have cows you've kept for a long time and they were valuable up until a certain age, and then they depreciated quite a bit. And an old cow going to market isn't going to be worth the same market value price or market price as a steer. So that cow is going to show some depreciation. You're going to show a loss. So your sales of that animal are going to be lower than maybe what you had it valued at in your application. So that could also increase this number down here. So there's just a couple examples of how you can show something besides depreciation on line 4H. All right. So in 2020, we closed with $22,030. That transfers over here to our beginning inventory for 2021. This year, for this example, we have a purchases again of $12,150. And then there were no sales and no gifts and no animals transferred in. So you can see that this equals $34,180. They needed to show depreciation again. And so this year they showed depreciation of $3,000 again. So they put $31,180 in here, and there's the depreciation. All right, so the next year, you can see we already have some numbers that we put in 4B for transfer in, and those were explained in the other video when we did the current inventory, because remember 1F has to equal 2B plus 2D plus 4B. Otherwise, it would say no down here, and then we'd have to make a correction. So if I took this out right now, this $4,700, and put the 0 in there, see, it says no, and it tells you it's off $4,700. But that's because this individual did transfer in some heifers. And this works the same for dairy cattle, any breeding animals that you have, any inventory that you're transferring from your current to your non-current inventory. So in addition to those animals that they transferred in, they also purchased $23,500 worth of new animals. And so we also have sales this year. So they sold some of their cattle for $5,250. Notice it doesn't let you tell how many head you sold, but again, this is a good time for you to record that information on your SAE entrepreneurship size and scope page. So when you're purchasing or when you're selling animals or when animals die, it's a good to record them there so that the judges can go back and see exactly what happened. All right. And I should be able to see that heifers were born in 2021, and heifer calves that he transferred in here. And I should be able to see that in his or her SAE entrepreneurship size and scope page. So there's a lot of room for you to write a lot of descriptions on that page and to provide details so the judges can follow along with your project and see what was going on. All right. So that is all the records they had. They didn't have any gifts. They didn't have any non-cash sales. So this totals $54,130. And that's these three things added, but then you subtract the sales. Okay. Because if I add up these, it would we would have to subtract the sales from that, because those are things that we lost from the program, or we removed from the program. So then we're going to show $3,000 of depreciation again. So 51,130 is going to be the number that we put there, and then that changes this to 3,000. So the non-current closing inventory from 2022, it's 2022, is going to go to 2023 right here. And then we're going to go in and put a number. Now you can see we have an animal that was transferred in again this year, which should show up in the entrepreneurship size and scope. It also was part of this closing inventory, and it's part of 1F. And so this is, remember, when you transfer, the only time you could appreciate the value of the animal. So that heifer was part of the inventory here, was part of the inventory here, but now she's moving down here. So that's why you have to include that in 1F and down here in 4B. All right, so we're going to put in purchases. There were no gifts. So we have $11,984 worth of purchases. And then we also had some sales. So we're going to put in $3,800 for sales. And then we can see what our total is here. That's these numbers added up minus the sales. And so then we're going to do another year of $3,000 depreciation. So we have 58,314. Oops. All right, so then you can see the $3,000 of depreciation. All right, that brings us to our last year. And so you can see we have to get to this number here. We cannot type in the closing inventory, so your numbers are going to have to match this. So currently we're showing a gain of $9,135, which is going to show a review. This should be zero or negative numbers. So we're going to, there you can see there's a transfer in of $11,500, but they also had purchased $13,500, and then they had a sale of $1,365. All right, and so now you can see the $3,000 depreciation. All right, so this is now all approved. There's no review. Everything says yes. So this is what your page should look like when you finish. You should have all yeses. It shouldn't say review. Your 1F should equal 2B plus 2D plus 4B. And you should have depreciation shown down here below. And like I said, there's no right or wrong way. There's lots of different types of depreciation you can calculate. And I have a video that I will share with you about that. So that is all there is to filling out the income and expense summary. Like I said, making sure that you have great records and that you kept records and you have those to fill out this form. It'll make it go so much quicker, and it'll be so much easier for you. One last thing before we leave this page in the American Degree application is if you look at number 5 on the income and expense summary, that you will see this is their annual net income from their operations and their net non-current transactions. So you can see this added their net income from operations and their non-current transactions together. So their first year in their SAE project, they actually lost $950 because of that negative sign there. And so the following years, you can see that they take their net income from operations, subtract their depreciation, and that gives them this number. Now, if you add all of the years up together, that gives you, so all of line 5, add that all up together, that gives you this total, 5A. So this is the total income and their net non-current transactions for their SAE project for all years. So if you want to see how well you did in your SAE project, um, that would be the number that you would want to look at. The percents are calculated by the programs. That's not something that you calculated. And then the yeses are also put in here by the program. So these numbers are automatically calculated and inserted into the application for you.